Let's turn our attention now to Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky met with US President Trump's special envoy in Kyiv, a day after a public feud between the Ukrainian and American leaders threatened to derail diplomatic efforts towards peace talks that are happening. But the meeting with Keith Kellogg, who's the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, was meant to discuss paths to ending the war that would safeguard Ukraine's interests. There was also hope that it might help diffuse tensions between Washington and Kyiv after Trump labeled Zelensky a dictator and the Ukrainian president accused him of echoing Russian propaganda. But whether any progress was made remains unclear because a news conference scheduled for after the meeting was cancelled at the request of the United States, according to Mr. Zelensky's office, although Mr. Kellogg and the Ukrainian leader appeared together for photos, as you can see on the left side of your screens. For a quick comment on the matter and for further clarity, we have with us Ray Locker at the moment. Ray, as always, thanks so much for making time for us. Despite the high stakes of this meeting, the scheduled press conference was abruptly cancelled. What message does this send, Ray, about the effectiveness of the discussions? And does it actually signal a lack of transparency?
Well, it definitely signals a lack of transparency. I mean, if they wanted to reveal what they talked about, they would have had the news conference. Kellogg has been seen as relatively supportive of Ukraine among the Trump team that is basically all on Russia's side. If you notice, Kellogg was not invited to the Saudi Arabia talks between U.S. and Russian diplomats, in part because I think the Russians thought he was too antagonistic. So it was natural that he would meet with Zelensky, and we'll see what happens in the next few days.
Ray, how significant is the role of Keith Kellogg in navigating this crisis, and what does it actually say about America's long-term strategy in Ukraine, considering what Trump has just said about 24 hours ago about Zelensky?
Well, I mean, Kellogg is a bit player in this team. He's an important guy. He has experience. He was a lieutenant general in the Army. He knows what he's talking about. But Trump's going to do what Trump wants. No one's telling him what to do. He's not listening to anybody other than himself or Vladimir Putin. So, again, Zelensky and Ukraine need to be very nervous about what the next steps are going to be.
Indeed, but with both sides seemingly at odds as we speak, how can they find common ground when trust appears to be at an all-time low?
Well, it's a challenge. I mean, if you're Zelensky, what do you do? I mean, you've seen what Trump has been saying. He's calling you a dictator. He wants you basically to give up. He's accusing Ukraine of having been invaded. They started a war because they let Russia invade them. It's hard to get around that. And so what Zelensky needs to do is build up his alliances in Europe and keep working on the people in the U.S. Congress, including Republicans who have been relatively emboldened to say that they don't agree with Trump on this issue.
Well, Ray, as always, thanks so much for joining us with your comments. We will, of course, see how this unfolds.